Call the meeting to order. I would ask you to turn your phone to silent or vibrate, and let's all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would ask the clerk to take a roll call.
Councilmember Strebe.
Here.
Councilmember Dalby.
Here.
Councilmember Myers. Councilmember Rowe.
Here.
Councilmember Stevens.
Here.
Mayor Lazio.
Here. We need a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second. Thank you.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
This is a time that we invite citizens to step up to the microphone if there's an item they want to talk about. We're covering the city budget tonight, so that's the only item on the agenda. Is there anyone that wants to address the council? Seeing none, we'll move on then. At this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to City Administrator Andrew Morris, who's going to start us off, and he and Bob Jay, our Finance Director, will make a presentation, and council will encourage your comments or questions.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor indicated, the purpose of this meeting is to have a general discussion of the proposed fiscal year 2016-2017 budget. Again, as the mayor indicated, Bob Jay, our Finance Director, has put together some slides. I'm going to give a brief overview of the budget, and then Bob will go into a little bit greater detail as to some of the components that constitute that budget. First of all, I want to thank staff, particularly Bob, Christy, and Mary, for the hard work they've done in putting together this budget. It is not an easy task. It takes a while, and you're working off certain revenue assumptions, and in addition to that, also looking at projected expenditures in the here and now and the not yet. I also want to make mention of the fact that staff has approached this budget process with a realistic expenditure outlook and have realistic expectations. I think it goes without saying the city does have certain financial challenges, but I think I can speak for the city staff when I say that the approaches that were made financially to the city in terms of their request were certainly in line, and there was nothing that was quite frankly out of kilter. I also want to reference the fact is a news information piece that you can reference the box online storage data program at www.cityofottumwa.org. Click on the government tab and select the council agenda, and you'll see the link for the city council minutes in the agenda online. This takes you to the public folder on box, which has been again updated by Ms. Fallon, our city clerk. This initial presentation, as I indicated, is for the 2016-2017 budget. As you may or may not know, the fiscal year begins July 1, and then, of course, it ends the just recently ended June 30th. This second meeting, if there's an additional hearing required, would be scheduled for February the 9th, 2016 at 5:30 p.m. That'll be a council decision as to whether or not to have a second meeting. I wouldn't call it a public hearing, but an additional meeting. February 25th, the budget will be published, and at the March 8th council meeting, council will be asked to approve the budget. The budget will be put in front of them for legislative consideration. This budget has to be certified to the county auditor no later than March the 15th of this year. I also want to add one other highlight to the budget process before we get into the slides. I know this is something that council has asked about, and I want to take particular note to thank Amanda Vallon, our city clerk, in putting together, quite frankly, a viable proposal. We were able to do both the legal review and the recodification for our city code, which is a little Byzantine. For those of you that attended the meeting we had here a couple of weeks ago on snow removal, at one point we were dealing with 3 different ordinances that speak to that. Really difficult to approach that from a realistic expectation, but that is in the budget. And again, I commend her for the hard work that she did and quite frankly, putting both the administrative cost and then the team that's going to be working with us through the recodification process. Muni Code is their name. Anyway, one other item I would mention as well, this budget represents our continued commitment to street repair and upkeep and maintenance. In addition to that, our work on the CSOs, the combined sewers. At this point, Bob J. has some slides, and I will give a summary on all of these. And then, as I said, Bob J. will go into the greater detail. The very first one you see is budgeted revenue. Now, I emphasize the fact that, as you know, with the city, there are more than one fund. The one that you commonly hear about the most is the general fund, which is general services, which is not a proprietary fund. That pays for the general services here at City Hall, police, fire, and admin, and the various other ones. But as you see here, the budgeted revenue, this represents all of them. I won't go through all of them, the verse in Scripture, but you can see from a revenue standpoint, you will see, if you can see that below, noted the property taxes represents about 30% of that income, services 40%, and then the others are in smaller margins. But again, that represents all of them. You can see on the right-hand side of the table, other revenue sources, budgeted revenues, again for 2016, 2017. Those are the revenues. The next slide, just to follow up on that, is the same, except this covers the expenditures. Same set of circumstances we're working under. In this, you can see the percentages at the top that note where the percentages are broken down on the various and sundry departments that pay for public services, public works. Again, this is the entire budget. You will note, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you will see business activities, debt service, recreation, capital projects, public works, and public safety. Public safety and public works take up a fairly large portion of these expenditures. And again, you will see to the right the programs that are funded in terms of economic development and also community and economic development programs. Go to the next slide. This next slide is a conveyance of the proposed operating budget. You will note this relates more specifically to our property tax revenue. Iowa is a state that generates a great deal for cities anyway, in terms of the revenue they receive from property taxes. I've shared, I know at some of our budget meetings in the cities in Missouri that I managed, you would receive maybe 11% of your income from property taxes. Here in Iowa, it's about 30, sometimes as high as 40%. It's a very important revenue source for us. The two items I would bring to your attention, if you look at the top of the screen, you see 2015, 2016, again to your right, and you will notice where it says subtotal regular levy just before ag land, and you move over to your left and follow that same iteration of numbers. You will see it first, the 12,388,687 as compared to the 13,090,486. That's an increase of approximately $701,799. That's additional property tax revenue that will come to the city. That represents an increase, a rather small increase of approximately 0.5%. The next sheet, you will see this somewhat goes back to the sheet that I just spoke about briefly. And this is, again, the property tax revenues. This is inclusive of the ag land. That was not included in the slide that you just saw before you. Again, this is inclusive, and you will see the amounts that are appropriated to the various and sundry funds, that 13 million, which you will recall on that second sheet, if you were to trace that back. That also follows that final column. You see where the 13 million is, again, where those two amounts are emblematic of each other. You go to the next slide. The next one I think gives pretty good outlay and description of what you're going to see by way of the general fund levy, the budgeted tax revenue over a given period of time. Actually, that's the three, the one that has the 4 on it. That one, yeah, that one. There we are. This, as you see before you, are taxes by agency. And this shows you where in terms of the property taxes or property tax dollars, again, how those are appropriated out by a percentage basis. Again, in Iowa, the cities receive the lion's share of their income from property taxes. You will note county and the school district, and then other. And Bob, the next one is general revenue net expenditures. I believe that's where you take over.
Yes.
So at this point, I will turn it over to Bob J. If you have any questions, the mayor indicated that at the beginning of the meeting, but if you have any questions about what you're going to see in the budget, I believe that the presentation that Bob is going to give will fill many of those holes. In addition to that, if you would wait until the end of his presentation and put your questions forth then so he can get fairly expeditiously. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bob J.
Thank you, Andy. The next slide that we have deals with the net expenditures, and what we do for the general fund is we take the gross expenditures for each department. Sometimes we combine them, like with the beach and Bridgeview Center, based off of this type of service they provide to the citizens. And then we reduce the gross expenditure by the revenues that are created or that they generate for their entity. And then we place that then in the chart here, showing what the net expenditure is as far as what in the general fund, what each type of service is actually costing. And so police 42%, fire 35% are the two big. Public safety is our largest consumer for revenue out of the general fund. And then the next slide shows the net expenditures as per the categories that we supply to the state of Iowa, public works, health and safety, or public safety, public works, health and social services and things. The next slide that we have is a breakout of the business activities by type. Once again, these slides are based off of information that once the budget is approved and finalized, we'll be submitting this information to the state off of their forms that they require us to do so. So here we show that the transit, based off of the $13,107,000 worth of budgeted expenditures, transit will be about 9% of that. Solid waste 15%. Sewer is going to be $5,144,000 basically, 41%. Bridgeview Center $1.1 million, and health insurance for employees $3,350,000. The next slide will be capital projects that we have currently projected to have in place. Sewer will have about $440,000, airport $238,000, streets was always a big one, $4,259,000. The next slide, or overhead, I guess, shows the debt service payments that come out of for the GO debt. We have current year and basically everything that's on the books at this point in time. This will change dramatically after the FY 2017 with the issue of the new CIP bonds that we will issue in the spring of 2017. But currently, we're projecting $4,273,000 in total payments, and that's broken out by the sales tax, how much is coming from the TIF area, how much is paid with other property taxes, and regular property taxes then. And we have approximately $3.6 million for FY 2018 and right at $2 million for FY 19. We also do an informational overhead for these next two. This covers street construction and street maintenance. FY 2015, the budget amount was $7,000,004. FY 16, $7,000,003. FY 17, $5,100,000. But keep in mind that we do not have any of the projects that will be funded through the CIP, so this will change dramatically next budget year when we make the presentation. It will be up probably in the $7 million range also. Street maintenance pretty much remains constant throughout the time period. So, final chart that I have is we do a comparison of the fiscal year budgets for the fuel and electric expenditures. As you can see, there really isn't a whole lot that changes there for, it went up 2016, 2017, but has remained fairly constant for fuel. And we look to see it actually drop down some more based off of the fuel prices that currently are in place for this current fiscal year. Electricity is up, and we've seen some dramatic changes in that based off of conservation and LED lights and things like that that the city has put in place. Okay, now, we'll be going off of, go ahead, I'm sorry, I forgot about that one. I also have a comparison here of some information that relates to our sister cities. I have updated our assessment information, but I have not updated the sister cities information because we don't have that yet. We won't have that till they actually finalize their budgets. And once that's done after March 15th, I'll get another report and get it out to everybody as to, with current figures anyway. As you can see, our taxable value, $628 million. Our general fund levy, which includes the emergency fund levy, will generate about $5,259,000 in property taxes. Our sister cities, which have a taxable value on average, this was as of FY 2016, so a year ago, of $806 million compared to what we have. Now, these are all cities that are within the same population range as what we have. Also threw in Oskaloosa and Fairfield just to kind of show you what the close surrounding two towns are that people we do business with and go back and forth for shopping and things like that. The thing that we have here is general fund revenue per capita. Ours is $210. The sister cities is $256, and Fairfield and Oski is $253. This next one, basically the same information, but shows on the chart side the general fund revenue per capita, and where we see that we are lower than even the smaller towns around us. This third chart shows who those sister cities are that we do our comparison with: Burlington, Clinton, Fort Dodge, Mason City, Marshalltown, and Muscatine. They all have comparable, for the most part, within 2,000 to 3,000 in population for us. But as you go through there and look, the valuations for property, the only one close to us right now would be Fort Dodge, and their valuation was, I mean, that's going to change. So I'm assuming it'll probably go up a little bit. Don't know for sure, but so anyway, this kind of shows you where we're sitting at. It also shows our tax levy. So in towns that are similar to us as far as economic basis for a property, the levies are higher. Where we have a greater valuation of property that's available, then of course the tax rate's a lot lower.
Bob, I think that is a really good slide that we ought to study a little bit. I know we had some visitors, one of them who was the mayor of Fort Dodge recently, and we often miss the fact that last year they were 20.94 and we were 20.7576. So again, I think the apples to apples.
Exactly, and that's what we have to look at when you have these cities. You can't look at Des Moines, you can't look at Ankeny. These cities that are growing, or they have a casino or something like else that's generating a bunch of revenue for them, and so then they do not have to levy property taxes on that. The next one shows the Oskaloosa and Fairfield, and basically, as it should be, the valuations are lower, and of course the property taxes are lower too. Then we're going to kind of go through now, briefly summarizing and hitting the high points of the rest of the items in the budget. And if you give me just a second. Like most accountants, there's never enough table space. So we're going to go through here just real quick. And go ahead and put that up there, Matt. Thank you. what we're going to start, overall property tax values did increase for us. Kind of saved our bacon this year. When you take into account what the ending commercial property tax value was last year, and they backed out $32 million worth of multi-residential, and the value was here, that's about a 22.5% increase based off of the value of the assessment when the county went through and reassessed everything. Like I said, multi-residential was removed from the commercial property tax value. We were receiving 10% rollback or a backfill on that. Once that was removed from that category, the backfill was no longer calculated and given to us. So that was, and that will be decreasing each year 3.25% till it reaches the residential rollback rate. The property tax levy is increasing 20 cents, and we're just, we're going to start jumping in here to the highlights of the different areas. The general fund balance. The general fund comes up with a balanced budget. It's one of the first times we've done that, been able to do that since I've been here. Normally we kind of dig into the fund balance a little bit, but it's revenues are projected to equal expenditures. The fund balance is projected to increase $19,580 from FY16 to $2,745,246. Revenues are projected to increase $635,567 to a total of $14,344,085, and general fund expenditures are projected to increase $348,064 to $14,344,085. The major general fund expenditures that are included in those that $14 million are police, $4,671,000, fire, $3,201,000, engineering, $461,000, health department, $517,000, parks, $874,000, beach, $460,000, planning, $364,000, administration, $566,000, city clerk, $218,000, and finance, $513,000. We'll move to the road use tax fund. The ending balance there is projected to increase $1,086,000 to $2,749,132. Revenues are projected to increase $636,841 to a total of $5,196,955. Expenditures are projected to increase $96,012 from up to a total of $4,861,326. And the major expenditures there are street maintenance, $2.5 million. Street lighting, $396,000. I'm rounding these up or down based off of the figures. Traffic maintenance, $338,000. Traffic light maintenance, $197,000. Snow removal, $330,000. Street cleaning, $253,000, and central garage, $637,000. The next slide is the employee benefits, where revenues are projected to increase $106,276 to $4,677,193. Expenditures are projected to increase $106,376 to $4,675,193. We allocate the employee benefits out to the following funds. The general fund, $3,297,000. Library, $193,000. Cemetery, $56,000. Road use tax, $534,000. Airport, $59,000. Retiree insurance, $485,000, and street projects, approximately $50,000. The next fund that we'll be touching base on here will be the emergency tax fund. Revenues there are increasing $7,865 to $176,582, and expenditures are increasing the same amount. The emergency tax fund levy, we have to record that revenue in its own fund, but once that revenue is received, we transfer it to the general fund. And 100% of that revenue is always transferred to the general fund. The local option sales tax fund, the revenues are projected to increase $469,671 for a total of $3,803,000. Expenditures are decreasing $478,388 to $2,464,037. And the major expenditures out of that fund are the general fund, property tax relief, $382,000, road use tax, $1 million, sewer debt service, $274,000, CIP 2015 debt service of $403,000, and the CIP 2015 debt service for the Lagoon Pump Station of $405,000. TIF funds are revenues projected to decrease $131,817 to $777,504. Expenditures are projected to decrease $127,550 to $761,859. And these items, I'm sorry, these items are in your tabs in your workbook, and they can be followed along on the box by type. The city is capturing out of the $156,603,773 in valuation. The city is utilizing 19 million of that for valuation only, not $19 million total. It's just a valuation. It'd be like the taxes are calculated on that by 1,000 multiplied by the rollback for the appropriate properties. And we did not this year utilize any, or projecting next year, utilizing any revenue from the airport TIF district. Risk management.
So that means it's self-sufficient.
Pardon?
The airport then is self-sufficient.
Well, what that means is that we just don't have any projects in the loop right now that would qualify for use of the TIF funds for that. The TIF funds are for capital projects only and not for operating. For the most part, we do have some downtown maintenance out of the Westgate TIF that we continue, but we are phasing out. We phased out the OEDC contribution, and we are phasing out the other items that we have over $5,000 a year till we get them all out and put it in the general fund. Risk management revenues are projected to increase $16,000 to $504,000. Expenditures are projected to increase $29,000 to $560,000. This fund pays nearly all of the insurance premiums for the city. We have a few policies like the airport and some other things that are small that don't come out of here, but come directly out of that fund that they're for. Airport fund, the revenues are projected to decrease $104,000 to $983,198. Expenditures are projected to decrease $75,000 to $968,590. And this is the fund that the airport is operated and managed out of completely. The library fund revenues are projected to increase $20,614 to $746,272. Expenditures are projected to increase $4,243 to $781,029. And once again, the library is the fund that the library is operated and managed out of. Cemetery and hazmat are coming up basically the same way. Cemetery revenues are projected to increase $17,369 to $342,516 total. Expenditures are projected to increase $9,491 to $373,921. Hazmat fund revenues are not expected to change, and expenditures are only projected to increase $1,853 to $99,128. The retiree insurance fund revenues are projected to increase $48,200 to $949,000. Expenditures are projected to remain constant at $1,221,500. We have a decent fund balance in that fund, so eating down into that is not a major issue at this time. The debt service fund, that's one of the overheads that Matt's got up there for me. Revenues projected to decrease $427,860 to $4,363,968. And expenditures of debt service are projected to decrease $521,297 to $4,473,016. The sewer fund revenues are projected to decrease $1,990,000 to $7,820,780. Expenditures are projected to decrease $1,790,494 to $7,443,397. And the sewer plant and the sewer maintenance programs are managed and operated out of this fund, plus any small sewer repairs, breaks, things like that that would need to be done. The landfill fund, its revenues are projected to increase $2,000 to $1,819,000. Expenditures are projected to increase $104,104 to $15,041,173. And once again, the landfill is completely managed out of this fund. The recycling center, the revenues are projected to decrease $69,500 to $475,500. Expenditures are projected to decrease $53,453 to $584,201. The transit fund. Transit fund revenues are projected to increase $41,203 to $1,200,354. Expenditures are projected to decrease $12,654 to $1,175,942. Once again, the transit fund and the recycling fund are all completely managed out of and operate out of each of those individual funds. The Bridgeview Center Fund revenues are projected to increase $19,246 to $1,150,805. Expenditures are projected to increase $15,784 to $1,147,340. The Bridgeview Center is operated and managed out of this fund. Make a note that city subsidy, we budgeted an additional $60,645 over the previous years. When we operate these, we try to maintain them to be revenue expenditure neutral. So we increase the subsidy to offset the reduction in revenue that they are anticipating and the increase in the expenditures that they are anticipating. The last little item that we have is the employee insurance. Its revenues are projected to increase $244,000 to $3,265,000, and expenditures are projected to stay the same at $3,350,000. All of the employees for the city of Ottumwa's health insurance benefits are paid, and life insurance are paid out of this fund here. And that's all I have, Andy. Thank you.
Let me just make a comment before we start with any questions. Andy and I sat through with Bob and Christie and the department heads, and I thought it was a very good budget process. They compared several past years and looked at each line item. And as Andy mentioned in his opening comments, I think the department heads need to be congratulated. They came in with realistic requests. There wasn't a lot of fluff or pie in the sky kind of thing. So it made the process go a little easier. It's still going to be tight, and we're still going to have to manage it, but I think Bob and Christie do a great job for the city, and you can see that with the booklet they prepared for the council and for staff to look through. So are there questions or any comments you want to make or ask Bob or Andy? Feel free to refer to anything they've commented on.
I guess I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
In the general fund, I just wanted to touch on a couple things, looking at the budgeted amounts versus the estimated amounts for 2015-16. I was looking at a couple of these line items here, and they seem to be either not there or going down, and I was kind of curious if you could explain those. And they might be logical. I just was curious. Line 4152, hotel restaurant inspections, you have zero revenue budgeted going into the next year. And I was kind of curious on lines 4522, 4755, and 4525 related to the beach, where it's budgeted to go down next year. And my curiosity has piqued on that since we just voted for an increase in the passes for next year. Why we would budget down in revenue?
Well, a lot of times what we do is we base our budgets based off the actual. So we sit with the department head, and as you look at this year, we have $15,877 in, or for the previous year in beach passes. So 16,000 more closely resembles what we actually received. So we try to go by and not inflate those. We're real conservative on the revenue size, and we'll sometimes budget a little bit more on the expenditure side to make sure, because we can't come back in here and make any changes once this is set. We have to abide by that. To answer the other question about the inspections, we no longer offer that program.
Okay.
Remember, you probably weren't here at the time, but in September 30th was the last day that the contract for that, and the state took over that inspection after that.
Okay. Okay. I guess if I could just ask one more question about the beach. During the meeting last week, it was mentioned that revenues would anticipate increasing $15,000, and I guess I'm not seeing that anywhere.
Well, we had this already prepared before that.
Perfect.
With these,
Okay.
once you do this, this is set in stone for a while. So we don't make adjustments based off of something that happened a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have one, Bob, that might be something along those lines of how we budget and stuff. The gas tax money, I know that's been a concern. Did we budget for that as far as, what streets and how that affects the overlay program? Is that, and I have, like I said, we got our budget books here a few days ago, so I haven't gone through every line item here, but where is that represented here in this,
That'll be in your road use.
in the road use?
And that's
what I
where you
thought.
see that fund balance increasing up.
Okay. And how much was
Of that.
that exactly? I never did,
Uh,
kind of knew what it might be, but what was the total?
the state provides estimates for us, and it's so many dollars per the population, and I got to find it here. And what we do is
513,000.
based off of history. We have the budget meetings every year. The Department of Management provides information to us in the fall to help us get ready for the budget, and every year the Department of Transportation says, "Hey, we're going to give you $60 per person." And then it's almost a guarantee. Every year you get about $57.85, maybe $58. So just based off of experience, we always budget a couple bucks less than what they say because it's never quite what they anticipate it to be. So this year they've budgeted, they're projecting current fiscal year $120.50 per person. Next year, $121 per person, and we're looking at about 100, I believe 119 or 100 or so that we're budgeting for that, just to be on the
Safe side.
safe side.
Sure. Outstanding.
Bob, I had one question, and this relates, pardon me, to something that would probably run more specifically to health and inspections. You may recall that we had a conversation, staff had a conversation, I know Jody Gates, Joni Keith, and I had a conversation about a new state law. I believe it's 802, 81, 89. I just remember 81, 89, the last ones. And Jody may have to step to the microphone and clarify this, but one of the items was embedded in that state law, if I have this correct, Jody, was that starting in July, all things being equal, the city will have to start fronting those court costs. And in some instances, would probably even have to carry the cost of the infraction. In essence, we would have to fund that. And I know I'm going to come to a conclusion here real quickly, because what I recall was, I can't remember it verse in scripture, but there were 3 steps that I remember Joni put forward, which would help ameliorate this and address this. And again, when you were making, Bob, your comments about this being cast before we had that discussion, that might be the case. I don't know that that projected loss was ever baked into the numbers or not, and I may not be looking at the right. I'm looking at 4772 municipal infractions health. It's got about $25,000. I don't know if that would be the line item that would speak to that. Perhaps court fines above that. Again, I don't know that it's going to be that large of a figure, but I'll have to, I think we probably need to visit with Joni and see whether or not she's put, I think she had to increase the assessment rate or something like that, which was assessed to the property, and us writing.
Well, that would be something we probably wouldn't really know what would happen until we actually start doing it.
Right.
Because that would be set up as a receivable. So it would be recorded as income, but it would not be collected as cash. So until we actually get some history on that, these figures here would probably be a fairly decent estimate as what the
Right.
revenue will be.
Right.
We might have a large receivable. The revenue side would still be recorded.
You're right. We'll just follow up on that. But the concern that staff had was that us not only carrying the court costs, but In addition to that, the infraction, I think, could be carried as well. I think all things being equal, what she has come up with, and she's ill today, so that's why she can't be at the meeting. I'll follow with her later and see what, if any, effect that has, whether she's put those revenue estimates in. I don't think it's going to have that big of an effect, but when we first got the letter, it certainly was some cause for alarm.
You explained in FY 2017 about the street construction going down to 5.1 million. On the very next page with fuel and electric, the fuel, those numbers seem to be pretty close, and electric is close for FY 2015 and 16. And then in 2017, it goes down about 193,000. Can you explain why that is projected at that lower number for electric?
It's based off of what we do when we do our budgets. We go back through and look at I look at 2 years of actual and then where we're at currently. And so that's how we base that. It's basically what we're getting done each year. We get closer and closer to what the actual expenditures are going to be. We leave a little room in there, but that's basically why.
Okay.
We've had 2 good years where the rates haven't been over the top.
Okay.
And so the use of it based off of previous, that's how we adjust that down.
Thank you.
Or up, preferably down.
Any other questions? Any other concerns?
We were under a considerable amount of stress not knowing how this multifamily rollback would work this year. Could you kind of explain, and I kind of know what happened with valuation this year, but we kind of escaped that for the year. Granted, we got at least 7 more years to go, and that could change at any moment based on that valuation. Could you kind of explain how we come out okay? I mean, within this budget, I'm assuming there's and I don't think there is any layoffs or any kind of changes in employment with our
Sure.
here in the city.
Well, like I said, what happened was overall, when the county went back through and reassessed everything, previously conversations were that you would see basically a wash. Those items that went up, those buildings that went up, you'd find a corresponding amount that would be reduced. Well, last year, the ending value of the taxable value, what we have as of January 1, 2014, the balance for commercial was 207 million. This year is 214 million. That is after they pulled out the $32 million worth of residential property, the multi-residential property. So that value went up considerably. Residential property went from 364 million down to 355 million. Industrial property, 29 million down to 23 million. Railroad, 2,400,000 up to 2,800,000. And the utilities without the gas and electric dropped $300,000. So basically the commercial is what has increased and brought up the whole total.
So basically, at any one point, any one of those variables there goes down, and most of them did. Commercial went up, but at any point, if commercial would happen to slide, we would be looking at the other flip side of the coin.
True, and I keep an average, and I don't have it on my spreadsheet here, but I run a moving average of the last 7 years of what we see as far as a trend for that. What kind of throws that all out of whack is the 10% property tax reduction for commercial. But overall, for the most part, everything usually runs and has been climbing 1 to 2%. So, but yes, if something would happen, then we have to go back and reassess the next budget year what's going on there.
Any other questions, comments? I think, Bob, it would be helpful for us to look at that. Again, it's not in our packet, that slide that you showed the sister cities. I think that really
Yes.
is an eye-opener, and I know we often compare ourselves with other comparable size cities, but the taxable valuation is what drives that levy. And,
Exactly.
when you look at that and hard facts, and that's not our information, that is all information from the Department of Management.
Correct. That's information that's obtained from every
Yeah.
one of those cities' budgets they submit to the state. So
We're
come
re-
March 15th, somewhere that we'll have it completely upgraded.
And I am pleased to report too that when we did our annual financial report, which goes back into the state, it's very consistent and you can compare us to anybody else. And I think our staff do a great job because I was looking back at last year's budget, this year's budget, and we're, all things considered, we're in good shape. I was worried that we were going to have more of a deficit, but I think we just have to manage really prudently and carefully. Andy, any comments from you?
I don't have anything else, Mayor, unless council members have any questions or comments. I guess at some point then, a determination is made as to whether or not to have another.
Correct. You'll need to decide whether you need to have another meeting, and we'll make another presentation, or if you have something that you have, take it to Mr. Morris, and we'll work from there on that.
Sure.
Make a discussion on that.
Okay, very well.
Once again, for me, it's easy for me to get up here and do this when I know that the legwork is all being done, and I can't say enough about my accountants, Christy McDowell, the great job that she does for us, for the city, and the time she puts in getting this information ready. And then this year with some issues that came up, Mary Cook popped in and stepped up and helped with the assembly of the information for everybody. Because normally this is one of those deals where we wait, and then at a certain point in time when everything's done for the budget meetings, we have a short period of time to get this information assembled and thrown in. And I'm sure that once you go through, there'll probably be some places where by the time I got through with the narrative, I meant to type in an increase and probably typed in a decrease instead. So don't hesitate to bring that to my attention. We'll get that corrected.
Okay. If there's anybody in the audience that wants to address any item that's not on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
What do you have, Mayor?
And 6:18.
Thank you.
Thank you all and good night.
Thank you.
Lisa, you know, you're a finance.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.